Welcome to Bad Gear, the show about the world's most hated audio tools. While we, the inhabitants of this post-everything dystopia, live in the best time for being a synth nerd, our ancestors and younger selves who just survived the Y2K Bug had to deal with a much bleaker market for electronic musical instruments. Today we are going to talk about the SH-32, this unholy offspring of a JP8000 and an MC303, 2002, not a synth, not yet a Groovebox, and Buchla Easel for kids design abomination is not only peak Roland, but also seems to be the blueprint for one of their latest direct-to-bad gear contraptions. At the first glance, the Roland SH32 is ticking all the tech buzzwords that didn't age so well boxes. Presumably sample-based pseudo-VA engines, can be controlled from what only seems to be a one-knob per function interface, and offer 7 groups of waveforms ranging from mundane classics to late 90s digital, adding up to a grand total of 67, including tonal noise and super soft. Feel free to dial in a pitch envelope, combine 2 oscillators, and introduce ring modulation at the cost of PWM and the Juno-esque sub-oscillator, or turn the synth into a filterless mono by engaging oscillator sync. Speaking of, the filter is surprisingly usable. Sure, you have to be super careful with the eardrum annihilating resonance, and yes, it won't self-oscillate, but there are 2 cutoff slopes and a multitude of modes. What is more, the envelope sliders and LFO controls are luxurious. Patches are rounded off using 2 FX units, one for inserts and one for send return stuff like reverb and delay. As mentioned before, the SH32 comes with basic Groovebox features. And if you thought that an MC303 was designed to mess with your frustration tolerance, you're in for a treat. Roland not only buried a rich selection of slightly dusty, yet tweakable drum samples in the machine, switching to performance mode also unlocks the synth's multitimbrality. Sounds can be assigned easily, but the 4 patches need to share the 2 FX units. Modifications to Performance FX apply to single patches too, and changes to a patch will have an impact on every performance linked to it. All sequencing functionality, including a 32-step sequencer and drum triggers, is located in the hopelessly overpowered polyphonic Arpeggiator. And there is no tempo knob or start-stop transport control. You can, however, tap tempo, record sequences in real time, or store musical motifs independent of patches and performances, again messing with both your live sets and recalling routines in the studio if you're not careful. All this leaves the stale aftertaste of a home keyboard accompaniment section and is topped off with a chord mode. Dual oscillator patches using up 2 voices, the real-life voice count will be significantly lower than the official Polyphony of 32. Presets are centered around the mainstream dancefloor sounds of yesteryear, The infamous low boost is buried in a startup procedure. Many essential features require you to step through near invisible menus based on digital 20th century hieroglyphics. You will have to squeeze the 4 turbos through a stereo output, and hardware MIDI through is dearly missed. The metal enclosure is a nice touch, but the 90s gear aficionados among us will know that the knobs Roland used back in the day are prone to failure. SH32s are surprisingly rare. I've been trying to find one for a reasonable price for years, but failed miserably, so I spent a little too much money on reverb. With its densely populated front panel and retro approach, the SH32 was Roland's last stand against the DAW revolution. Is it an underrated future classic? You have already heard that thing in today's intro tune. Seems like TR-707 samples were out of stock, but the MC Groovebox heritage is quite obvious. Let's explore performance mode and give the filter a little swirl. Wasn't so bad, and even worse than I expected at the same time. The overall tone, while deep in the uncanny valley of Y2K digital, is perfectly usable with slightly pungent cheese notes, but it is very easy to lose track of what's going on in spite of the knobby UI. Implementation of Multitimbrality and the sequencer/arpeggiator workflow are traumatizingly bad. Time to tweak some drum samples out of the Eurodance zone and explore patch mode. I found that to be quite challenging. Both the synth engine and drum section are capable of producing nice tones once you hit a sweet spot, but consistently delivering high quality patches in the heat of a jam situation is not always easy. I wanna know if we can make it work with the additional time a studio environment offers in Never Talk to Me or my real vintage SH synth ever again, or I call the cops early noughties Arpeggiator throwback. Verdict. On paper, the SH32 seems to be the ultimate 2000s synth. More hands-on controls than a microKORG, the synth engine had an edge over early VSTs, and traditional standalone grooveboxes were in high demand. However, we are still talking about a Roland instrument, so it goes without saying that they messed it up with dated presets, tedious workflow quirks, and half-baked sequencing features. It is fascinating that all this more or less still applies to its spiritual successor, but in spite of the numerous limitations, the 2002 original at least had a character of its own. Thanks for watching and see you next time! Hey guys, I hope you enjoyed the episode. Feel free to like, subscribe, become a patron and use one of the links down below that support the channel regardless of what your bad gear guess commands you to buy.